The intermediate climbing plateau is a really common sticking point for lots of climbers. We are back again with Coach B, to address some common oversights and mistakes, perhaps, made by climbers breaking the intermediate climbing plateau.
A very common, I guess, a reason for a plateau that I see quite commonly in climbers is often when we get stronger in certain areas, we can then pull ourselves out of using better technique. So climbing is a really interesting sport where if we don't manage all aspects of it quite evenly, we can get massive outlying strengths and massive outlying weaknesses. And if they're not constantly managed, we actually can go backwards when we're trying to go forwards. So highlighting those weaknesses for me is the funnest part of my job, so that I can then help people do this and then they do this. But often we're stuck here. An area of climbing that never fails to be beneficial for every ability level of climber is obviously the footwork. Everything stems from the feet. Something that I commonly see is when we're on easier climbs, we have often bigger footholds. So it's quite hard to feel the need to hone into the feet when you could just chuck the foot anywhere. And in your mind, you're just trying to get warmed up. And that sometimes feels a bit like I should be pulling and moving fast and ladder climbing. Not helpful for when we're trying to hone our energy into our footwork. So something that I get everybody to do at the beginning of their climbs is to put their awareness into the 5 Ps again. Place precisely, pivoting, pushing or pulling. So even on a big climb like this where we've got massive footholds, I'm putting my energy into how I'm placing the foot. If I'm pulling on the foot, pushing on the foot, or potentially pivoting. And when is it advantageous to do each one of those? As soon as I put my energy into my feet, I start to weight my lower body more intentionally as well. And it might make me think a little bit more about setting my base and moving my hips. The first 2 Ps, place precisely. Both of those Ps have a significance. So we can place our foot, but actually placing it with a really precise intention means that we're not just putting it on the hold really silently and carefully, we're thinking about what is the best part of the hold to use. And doing this actually on easier climbs, we can learn more often than doing it on harder climbs where it's a little bit more obvious perhaps because the holds are smaller. So on bigger holds, we might have an area where we've just got a slight dip in the hold, for example. And if we place precisely into that dip, we then get the feel for, am I pulling onto this hold? Is it at an angle where I can actually imagine I'm crimping onto it? Or is it one where I'm sort of pushing against it to get a drive? And it depends in what direction you're trying to move and the nature of the foothold. But just that awareness is going to help us when it comes to harder climbs as well. It's also really important to be aware of when might we need to pivot on a foothold. Sometimes it's not always clear when we start off the climb if we are going to at some point want to pivot into a drop knee, for example. So how we place the foot will either allow us to do that pivot or it won't. So I'll demonstrate for you a poorly placed foot that might scupper us when it comes to pivoting. So there, I placed my foot just a little bit too far over onto that hold. So when I went to rotate to do my pivot, my foot fell off the edge. So if I was going to do that a little bit more precisely, I'd be placing in a place where I knew that if I rotated my ankle round, I'd make enough space to come in for a nice little foot swap. Or for example, if I was just doing a drop knee here, I would have plenty of room to rotate. So a really helpful way for me to get an idea of how much energy people are putting into their footwork is to get them on slightly easier climbs where maybe they're a bit more comfortable and not naturally thinking about it as much, and see what kind of habits maybe they've picked up. So this yellow one,
Yes.
got some good big feet that can be used thoughtfully as well.
Okay.
I like how you did really precise footwork on the way down there. So if for the sake of it being a drill, because like anything in climbing, there's no right or wrong, but we can consciously put our awareness in a place to try and encourage some growth in that area.
Yeah.
So let's say this time that you do it, I'd like you to try and focus on the 5 Ps. So you're going to be placing precisely on every foothold. And before you start using that foothold, making a choice as to whether you're going to be pulling onto that hold or if it needs to just have a push straight away. Is it going to help you initiate like a rockover move, or is it helping you just stand up tall through a pushing position? Is it a little bit of a slopey foothold? Do I want to drop my heel down? Am I going to have to be reaching off high on this foot and coming up onto a toe? Just having lots of energy into the feet, and ideally it will then be silent, because if you place precisely, naturally you don't make a noise.
Yeah.
And you should just start feeling like you're really weighting your feet, like your shoes are almost trying to push through the holds. Hopefully that will lead to nice relaxed upper body climbing as well.
Yes. Okay. So for this kind of like practice, we've obviously come down quite a lot through the grades. If we're looking like at advanced climbing, this is not an advanced climb. Are we looking at like climbs that are a lot less difficult so that we can slow it down in this way?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's conscious learning needs to be done at a level where there's enough capacity in the mind to learn something new. If we're at our limit, it's very hard to make any changes, because we're in fight mode rather than learn mode.
Yeah.
So I love bringing people back into an environment where they feel totally comfortable, where there's all of the energy and capacity to learn something new.
Well, I guess it could have been a misconception of mine that in a coaching session focused on advanced climbing, you'd chuck me on advanced climbs. And I think that once you're like trying to crack into advanced climbing, you think that the best place to learn how to do that is on advanced climbs. You're trying to climb advanced climbs, so why would you not just be throwing yourself at advanced climbs?
Exactly.
But actually, there's a big argument for not doing that.
The other interesting thing on that is when we are at our limit, we're often trying to perform at our best. So it means that you're using the things that you're generally going to be better at because you're trying to climb your hardest. And if we're always trying to climb our hardest, we're probably not stepping backwards and getting better at the things we're not as good at, just getting better at the things we're already quite good at. I always teach that the chain starts at the toe, right? So it's feet, hips, hands. So if we're placing precisely with the feet, we're then ready for the hips to come into play. But if we don't have the energy straight away into the feet, quite often that chain of events goes opposite and we go hands first, and then it's almost a last thought to move the hips. So as much as the hips are kind of like the number one important thing in movement and getting that right, if it doesn't start from the toe, often this gets left behind or scuppered.
Yes.
So feet, hips, hands.
Yeah, and from memory, I think that's what happened on my first attempt, was because these holds feel really comfortable to me, I think my foot slipped because I probably pulled up onto my arms, left the feet behind a bit, slipped. Yeah. Luckily, on a this climb, it's okay, I can save it, but if it were a climb at my limit and the handholds weren't so good, or I was really tired because it was the top move on the climb and I was trying really hard, then maybe I wouldn't be so lucky to be able to hold it.
Yep. So even taking your time on this first move to think, how can I be in balance to place, are my hips in the right position to make that move nice and steady? So it kind of, the joy of this drill is it teaches us so much more than just footwork, because we have to have a good body position in order to place precisely. For example, if I was a bit try-hard bicep abusing here, to then place my toe on there feels horrible. Whereas if I've got myself into a nice balanced position, I can then place and then I can pivot. So then I'm setting up the movement, I've got my nice straight arm, and then maybe that's going to allow me a nice static movement, and I'm in balance again to place precisely, pivot, and then I'm in balance to place precisely, pushing back against the hold here, which is then enabling me to lift my hips up for that last move. Something else I often see in more intermediate climbers is as we build a confidence up at a certain grade, we get almost addicted to that feeling of fighting for the next grade. And quite often we're gonna achieve the next number by playing to our strengths. That's a really common cause for a plateau, because if we're not always coming backwards to easier things, we're not going to be learning some of the skills that might actually help us unlock the next grades, especially at a more consistent level. Is it actually best to do my default rock over, for example, on this move? Or if I were to practice on easier climbs, doing a drop knee, for example, or doing a flag, staying maybe more front on and staying on our inside edge, as opposed to always defaulting to an outside edge. So I'm gonna try this blue climb, and my rule to myself is you have to stay on your inside edge. If we use our warm-up times and easier climbs to experiment with what is actually the best technique for me and my body on this climb, and we might actually learn that sticking to our default front on rock over, for example, or outside edge flag, isn't actually the most effective way to unlock that problem. In order to practice those techniques that may be less intuitive for the individual, and that often, most commonly is what I see, is the confidence on the inside edge flag, whether that be an in front one or a behind one. So I might encourage people to find a nice easy jog climb like this red, and set the challenge of start on your inside edge and just see how many inside edge flags you can do on this climb. I initiate the first movement by stepping onto my inside edge. My mission is to avoid doing any bicep abuse, try hard turtle. We're going to try and jolly giraffe, straight arm, long neck every movement, and hopefully this will kind of force us to work on the inside edge flag. So this is quite a static version of it while we're just getting used to these body positions. And I'm going to test out a few moves. So it might be that on some of them I test it out and that's actually not within my reach. So what I learned there is that if I get a higher foot and do a back flag, I can reach that hold. If I stay into a nice jolly giraffe neck. Cool. So it's not to say we always have to do that really slow and statically, but sometimes we can learn more at that slow pace because we've got the time to think about keeping the neck long, keeping the arm straight. If I try and reach past that hold, the classic 3-second hover, we can learn a lot more in that time. If contrary to that, you know that your weakness is actually rock overs, then I might encourage people to spend a lot more time trying to get their weight over the toe and actually rocking into movements. So it does involve a little bit more pulling with the arms, but it's actually quite a nice climb to practice really placing, pulling and shifting the weight over. So rock overs don't have to be super bicep abusey if we're really using the lower body as efficiently as we can. Is dynamic movement your weakness? I would encourage people to try and now eliminate as many holds as possible and force that pop. Okay, so a really nice, easy climb to get going on dynamic movement would be slab, vert, something that's got nice, easy, almost ladder-like climbs. And my challenge is going to be to move both hands at the same time. One of my favorite things to do on this is to add a clap in before we grab the hold, because it then forces us to move dynamically, but also find that moment where gravity isn't pulling us down and we've even got time to do a little bit of a clap.
Before we dive into Bee's next tip, I've got something new to share with you from a long-time supporter of this channel, Rungne. They worked with us on some of our favourite concepts in 2024, like the Creator Cup and the 8 levels of route setting, and they also worked with us to launch our favourite t-shirt design last year. We're really grateful to them for helping us to make videos possible on this channel and across climbing YouTube. Rungne are well known for their apparel and their chalk, but they also just launched their own ambassador community on the Club app. Over on the Club app, they're building a community of climbers and creators. Anyone can get involved with community challenges and enjoy benefits and rewards. So in the Rungne community on Club, you sign up, you get access to challenges and updates where you can earn rewards and discounts on Rungne gear. If you want to get involved, signing up is easy. You can hit the link in the description of this video, download the app and start exploring the benefits. Rungne has asked us to put our own challenge in the app, so we want to know how you've broken your climbing plateau. Tag us in an Instagram story sharing a tip that's helped you progress your climbing. You can find all the information for the challenge when you sign up in the app.
People often say it's frustrating to come backwards I'm at this level, I don't really like spending time coming back to like the V2s, V3s, because it's kind of challenging for our egos as climbers to be like, no, I'm a V6 climber, therefore I will project V6s. I don't want to be coming back and doing like doubles on a V2, V3. But if you know that your weakness is I'm struggling to hit a dead point or a dynamic movement on climbs nearer my limit, the only way we're really going to build up to the point where we can do it on the harder grades is if we practice it on the easier stuff and build up those kind of movement patterns in our bodies. In deadlifting, for example, we don't train to hit our limit 1 rep max by just trying a 1 rep max every now and then. You go down a little bit, say to sort of 80 or 90%, you do more repetitions at that level, and then, alas, in a month's time, you hit a 1 rep max that's a lot higher.
Maybe as I've progressed through my climbing and gotten a little bit stronger and more skilled, I have maybe developed a bit of an ego that stopped me from exploring lower grade climbs in the gym that look hard, or given me a mindset of like, I am a V5 climber, and so if I go into the gym for my session, in order to feel like I'm making progress and improving, I need to be climbing V5 and above. And there's no, like if I have a full session of V2s, I can't call myself a V5 climber because I've not climbed any V5s. And I think I definitely relate to an experience in my own climbing of, I guess, grade chasing, if I'm like honest. I rarely feel like I've had a good session if I haven't ticked something that's right at the top of like what I feel I'm capable of.
It's exactly how those plateaus occur though.
Yeah, I guess I'm noticing a pattern or a way of thinking that's maybe quite narrow or closed-minded of what trying hard looks like in a session. And for me to try hard in a session, it has to be V5 and above, because that's my project grade. And it has to involve an application of my strength.
Yeah, because you've decided what you feel satisfied achieving.
Yes.
And if that is a number or a feeling, those are the benchmarks that you are probably striving for every time you go climbing.
Yeah.
And if you only ever strive for those things every time you go climbing, you'll only ever reach that plateau.
Right.
So we have to come out of our comfort zone, ideally every time we go climbing. Mm-hmm. And that might mean integrating, so say if dynos are your weaknesses, integrating doubles into every warm-up you do.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you become a dynamic climber.
Yeah.
That kind of for me is the difference between climbing and dancing, and why I like to teach climbing as the vertical dance. Mm-hmm. Because if we all climbed for the same reason as why we dance, we're not dancing to hit a grade unless we're competitive with it or something. Mm-hmm. We do it for the feeling. So if we could come to the wall to achieve a feeling rather than a grade, that I believe is where the best climbers get better and better and better, because they genuinely love all climbing and the feeling of all climbing. And every example I can think of the best climbers that I've ever worked with, they've just enjoyed, they don't care what the grade is. They've done climbs with one hand with their mum just for the fun of playing around with an off-balance feeling.
Yeah, it feels super counterintuitive, right? But it's almost like that, maybe an overemphasis on climbing through the grades slows down that process. Whereas if you kind of like detach from the outcome, if you can detach from the outcome slightly while still having like a goal that motivates you, because I know for a lot of climbers it's really important to have that grade goal
100%.
or to have that strength goal or whatever it may be, then you can kind of have a more balanced experience that might even though it sounds counterintuitive, get you to a higher grade quicker, because you're not, it's like the watch kettle never boils, right? Like if you're
100%.
obsessing over a grade, maybe you're slowing yourself down without realising it.
100%. So this is actually a really exact reason why the game that we're going to play now is such an effective game. Okay, so how can we as more intermediate climbers make sure that we don't take ourselves too seriously and our climbing too seriously, and we remember why we do it. We do it because it's fun. We do it because we get to enjoy spending time with our mates. So adding in games like this to our climbing not only brings us back to the basics, it helps us to enjoy the feeling of fun climbing that then in turn is going to pop up on those harder climbs and we're going to be ready for them. So this game is called Climb. It's like skate. I don't know if any of you know of the skate game. In a pair or in a group, you take it in turns to pick a challenge. So for example, I'm going to say to Hannah now, we're going to climb this climb and we're only allowed to use our left hand. So depending on how difficult the climb is, the person setting the challenge sets the parameters. So I'm going to say left hand only.
Okay.
For pink hand holds for hands, but you can use any feet you like.
Any feet, just left hand?
Any feet, just left hand.
Okay.
The person that sets the challenge lets the other person go first. But if they flash the challenge and the setter doesn't, they immediately win the point. So if you do it first go just with your left hand and I fall off, I get a C.
No.
No. Okay, so I get a chance to give you a C now.
Okay.
So if I do it, then you get a C.
I'm minus a point.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Smooth. Come on, babe. Nice.
Had to be done.
I think that it really forces you out of your comfort zone because you don't have the stability of your other arm.
Exactly.
You've not got that like safety, that feeling of safety.
Yeah, and that's kind of what a lot of modern day bouldering is and how we can get a little bit stuck getting over some of these plateaus, especially in these modern sets, is the route setters are kind of having to think of new ways to challenge us. So throwing us off balance is one of those ways. So if we encourage ourselves to go off balance on easier moves to build up that confidence, things like this will start feeling easy peasy for you in no time if you do them a lot.
Yeah.
But if we never encourage that stuff, we're going to still stay a little bit shy of those movements. So things that I would pick for this game is stuff like picking one hand to do the climb, maybe picking one leg to do the climb, trying to do as many of a particular technique as possible. So it might be, okay, how many inside edge flags can we do on this climb? The person that does the most useful inside edge flags wins that point. The person that finds the most drop knees wins that point. You have to do it in doubles. So every move, you've got to release both hands at exactly the same time and land them at exactly the same time. And you can be strict on if you hear a beat that's not dun, if it's dun, then you lose a point. So some people would do it in as few handholds as possible, for example. So a nice easy jug climb. Okay, who can get to the top using as few of the holds as possible? And then it's just counting the number of holds. Next challenge, hover past the hold for 3 seconds.
Okay.
Très bien. Oh yeah, she did. When to drop.
Cool.
Oh.
Way.
Okay.
That's quite hard.
Find the balance. Where's 1, 2, 3? Nice.
It's felt a strenuous way to do it.
Yeah, interesting. 1, 2, 3. She loves an outside edge, doesn't she? Hello, heel hook. Nice.
So I think the climb or skate game is like a really nice way to wrap up everything that we've covered in today's session. We've covered some really good like focus points or areas of focus that are most commonly overlooked.
Yeah. I think one of the key things is actually just being really honest with yourself, because we often seek out a coach to be like, I've hit this plateau, help me get over it. And we nearly always know what our plateau is, or we nearly always know what our weakness is. Sometimes we don't, and obviously I shouldn't undersell my job. It's hopefully very beneficial to go to a coach to find out what that is. But if you actually ask yourself, why do I climb, and am I actually working on my weaknesses, or am I just striving for a feeling of success and progression for that next grade every time? So yeah, just being honest with ourselves and really questioning our intention for each session before it starts.
And on that note, I'm going to leave Bee's information in the description of this video, because if you haven't already booked a session with Bee or a remote coaching call, then at this point, what are you doing?
My remote stuff is the best way to get hold of me, and I do video analysis and chats, and it's often not that hard to watch a few videos, spot some things, and then get people to work that out for themselves as well.
I hope that you took a lot from this video, and we'll see you soon